Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Pretenders or contenders. There's a number of names in the heavyweight division that sort of fall into that category. Often we need to see more, to know more, to determine which group they fall into. In January 2019, I did such a video canvassing 7 different guys. Were they a pretender or a contender? Because at that point, we needed to see more, and 2019 provided the opportunity. So we can now deliver some judgment, a verdict on each of those 7 guys. But then again, it may not be that simple, because some guys that I listed didn't actually fight in 2019, so the judgment process may have to wait for them. So what I'll do is I'll play a clip from the video from January 2019, and then I'll get into some thoughts on the fights that these fighters either got into or didn't get into, as the case may be. The first pretender or contender candidate was Tom Schwarz. This is what I said in January 2019. I'm not sure how high his ceiling is. I'm wondering if it really is European level. I haven't seen enough from him to show me that he can go past that. But, you know, I'm happy to be proved wrong, but we'd like to see some of these fights so we can actually get a better read on him. Tom Schwarz, the German, was embarrassed by Tyson Fury in June 2019, where he missed several steps which he should have had before fighting a guy like Fury. Totally outclassed and embarrassed in a couple of rounds, made Tyson Fury look super slick and a supreme elite fighter in the heavyweight division. That was not a good performance by Schwarz, and since he's been facing either 1, a journeyman, and 2, a former cruiserweight that he'd already previously beaten. So he has not proven that he's above German domestic level. I'm not sure he's even at European level at this point. He's going to have to graft away to prove more to heavyweight boxing fans that he deserves to be in the conversation as a guy who's even in the top 50. And at the moment, Schwarz is actually rated outside the top 50 on BoxRec. He's fallen to 73. I think at the point that he fought Fury, he was about 50th, something like that. But the next guy, Zhelei Zhang. This is what I said about him at the start of the year. And given he's 35 and he's going to start, his prime is going to be ebbing away here. He needs to get cracking and show us something in 2019. Otherwise, he's just going to, we're not going to see the best of him. He may just fade away into obscurity. And Zhang did actually have one fight to show us something in 2019. He recently fought Andre Rudenko in Monaco and put on a pretty decent performance, outpointing Rudenko and getting a good win. So I think we can class him as a contender, a top 30 sort of guy. But it is a case that he's going to need to show more in 2020 to prove he's more than a top 30, top 40 guy in the division. Hopefully now that he's on a co-promotional deal with Matchroom, he can actually get into some more meaningful fights to progress his career. Because remember, Zhang is actually 36 years old at this point. He will be 37 in May. So he's got to get cracking, because the last shreds of his prime will be ebbing away. The next guy, Kyotaro Fujimoto. This is what I said about him earlier this year. But Himono fought Fujimoto back in 2012, and since then we've effectively seen the ghost of Kyotaro Fujimoto, because nothing he's really done since then would indicate he has any appetite for taking on anyone who presents any risk. A lot of poor names on his record now. Fujimoto facing Daniel Dubois in December 2019, absolutely blown out, outclassed. It really was a mismatch of epic proportions, and I'm sure that Kyotaro Fujimoto on the back of that will probably fade into the ether now, because I can't see him going anywhere or doing anything in the heavyweight division beyond some of the low-level fights that he had been engaged in. The next guy is Junior Fa. This is what I said about him at the start of the year. He needs a step-up fight to prove how good he is. And if he ever wants to make that fight with Joseph Parker, he needs to get a couple of good wins on his resume to sort of build the demand for that fight. Fa and Parker obviously have some history in the amateurs. They split wins 2 apiece, and a match in the pros could be a dead rubber. Right now, Parker's coach, Kevin Barry, has talked about, Fa calling out Parker as a bit of a joke, even though Barry has even been on the record saying that they offered the most recent fight that was against Alexander Flores to Junior Fa. did have 2 fights in 2019. One was against Dominic Gwynn. He got dropped in that one, but got off the canvas, showed some heart determination, came back and outpointed Gwynn pretty comfortably in the end. He then later fought Devin Vargas on a card in Utah, and he won that one, and it was a relatively comfortable points decision, but he had a lot of trouble in that fight, getting caught with a lot of shots, and ultimately it was a much funner fight than I think many were expecting. That loss to Farr was the first time that Vargas had not been knocked out in a loss. He'd previously been KO'd by Andres Wierzich, Kevin Johnson, Jason Bergman, Dominic Brazil, Andy Ruiz Jr. So Vargas is a sort of journeyman level gatekeeper. Farr got past him, but didn't necessarily impress as he may have wanted to. So I'm still on the fence about him. I need to see more. On to the next one. Richard Lartey. Heading into the year, he was a bit of a ghost of sorts. Not a lot of footage around, not a lot of presence on social media, not a lot of anything. It was anyone's guess how good this guy really was. This is what I said about him at the start of the year. Richard Lartey, how good is this guy? Because he was due to face Junior Farr in 2018, due to face Joe Joyce. It didn't happen. And he's fought back in Ghana. He's got a minor title with him, the WBO Africa. That's got him a place in the rankings here. We need to see how good this guy is. Does he really deserve to be there? Hopefully we see him take a step up in 2019. Ultimately, though, he did sign on to fight Daniel Dubois, and this is another guy that Dubois from this list had knocked out. So this was a pretty fun fight. Lahti came to fight, he came swinging. Ultimately, though, he got knocked out in 4 rounds. So I could see him being in similar fights with up-and-coming prospects where he is a guy who's got a decent chin, he can sort of bang a bit, but ultimately probably loses. The next man on the list is Trevor Bryan. So he holds a piece of hardware in the WBA, the WBA interim heavyweight title. So he is classed by the WBA as a world champion. This is what I said about him at the start of the year. The guys who he fought before the world title, the interim title, had a collective 44 losses between them. Trevor Bryan really needs to prove that he's worth his salt and do something in 2019. Otherwise, he may end up, if he doesn't take something else, he's going to be called one of the worst heavyweight champions of all time. But what did we see from him in 2019? Absolutely nothing. He laid a big fat egg and didn't have any fights. He hasn't fought for 18 months at the time that this video was made. So yeah, who knows how good he is, because he fought a former cruiserweight BJ Flores for the title. The 2 guys before that had a collective 44 losses. He didn't show us anything more, and who knows what's going on. He keeps posting stuff, see here on screen that, his future's about to be lit. These are things from his Instagram story. But whatever's happening, it's not going his way. 2020, let's see something, or he needs to be stripped, because this is ridiculous at this point. And the final guy I referenced in my January video was Zhang Jiang. Here's what I said about him at the start of the year. He's 37 years old, the alias the Dragon King. There's been quite a bit of controversy about this guy, simply for the fact that there was, claims that some of the fights he'd been involved in had never happened. That, they were phantom fights. It's really a curious case, Zhang Jiang. So like Bryan, Zhang Jiang laid a big fat egg in 2019. No fights, and he also had no fights in 2018. He hasn't fought since the end of 2017. So what is going on with him? Well, we just don't know. He is 37 years old at this point and withering on the vine, you would have to imagine. Is he ever going to step up? I don't know. Like Bryan, need to see more. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.